a Boeing 747, which had 524 people on board. At 24,000 feet, the tail of the aircraft suddenly separates in the air. The flight crew had neither the controls nor the direction. There was neither oxygen nor air pressure in the cabin. But despite that, how do they keep the aircraft in the air for the next 45 minutes? This is the story of human courage, engineering failure, and a flight that had no control at all. And that flight was Japan Air 123. Welcome to MZK WorldScope videos again. On 12th of August 1985, a Boeing 747 of Japan Airlines was off-boarding passengers at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. After exactly an hour, it had to take off again and go to Osaka. Thousands of people travel from Tokyo to Osaka every day, but today was a little extra busy because people were going to their hometowns for the Japanese holiday season, Obon. After cleaning the aircraft at Haneda Airport, 509 passengers and 15 crew members boarded Japan Air 123. It was a routine flight for the crew, but the passengers didn't know that the plane they were going to travel on was a victim of a long-standing weakness, a horrific problem that neither the pilots nor the flight engineer knew about. Due to the busy schedule, this special Boeing 747 was going to be the sixth flight of the day. If we talk about the three cockpit crews, the 49-year-old Captain Masami Takahama will lead the flight, which had a total of 12,000 hours of experience. The first officer was 39-year-old Yutaka Sasaki, who was already in the process of being promoted to captain, and this flight was the most important for his promotion. He had a total of 3,900 hours of experience. The 46-year-old flight engineer in the third cockpit crew was Hiroshi Fukuda, whose job was to sit behind the pilot seats and keep an eye on the technical problems of the aircraft. Looking at the ability of the cockpit crew, it would not be wrong to say that the lives of 509 passengers are in complete safe hands. But like the crew, is this aircraft also capable of this or not? We'll find out in a little while. At 6:04 p.m. in the evening, the doors of Japan Air 123 were closed, and the pilot started taxiing the aircraft to runway 15L. It was going to be a very short flight from Tokyo to Osaka, just 1 hour and 12 minutes. That is, as long as the aircraft reaches its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet, preparations will be made to take it down. The weather in Tokyo was clear, but today there were many thunderstorms in Japan. Because of this, the pilot was instructed that he would not go directly from Tokyo to Osaka, but would go over the ocean. Now, on runway 15L, Japan Air 123 was ready for takeoff. At 6:12 p.m., after getting permission from the control tower, the pilot lifted the thrust levers of the aircraft and successfully took off. Everything that happened until then was completely normal. But exactly 12 minutes after takeoff, there is a loud noise inside the aircraft on Sagami Bay, and there is a hole in the back of the tail. The excitement of the passengers who were still very excited to go home turns into fear as soon as they blink. Because of the hole, there was a lot of noise in the cabin, and loose things quickly started pulling towards the hole. It all happened so fast that it was difficult to even get an idea of what happened. This noise was so loud that it was heard in the cockpit as well. In the cockpit voice recorder, this sound was felt something like this. It is important to know here that as the plane goes to altitude, the outside air begins to become thin and the oxygen level also decreases. To counter this, artificial pressure is filled inside the cabin, which is almost equal to the atmospheric pressure of the ground. This means that the pressure outside is less at 24,000 feet, and the pressure inside the cabin is more, and this extra air pressure is constantly applying pressure from the inside on the walls of the cabin. The cabin of the plane is kept completely airtight so that this artificial pressure does not leak in any way. But if even a small part of the cabin is weak, the air pressure can tear that place apart and create a hole. Because of this, the artificial pressure of the cabin will end, and the passenger's health can deteriorate. In addition, due to the decrease in oxygen level, it can be difficult to breathe. Something similar happened in Japan Air 123, but both the pilots do not know about it yet. They were heard talking to each other in the cockpit voice recorder, in which they sometimes talked about the breaking of the landing gear door, and sometimes they felt that this sound might have come from the engine. He first set the transponder frequency to 7703, which is a universal distress signal. That is, now all the control towers will know that Japan Air 123 is in an emergency situation. The captain decided to land the plane back in Tokyo. But is the plane capable of doing this or not? First of all, he told the control tower about the emergency situation and asked for permission to land back in Tokyo. The control tower gave the captain permission to land in Tokyo at a 90-degree turn. The first officer who was sitting on the controls turned the plane to the right at an angle of exactly 40 degrees. But both the pilots were even more scared to see that the plane's angle was much higher than 40 degrees. At this point, the captain was shouted at by the first officer to reduce the bank angle. But the angle did not decrease at all. The co-pilot tried again and again, but the plane was not responding to any of his inputs. In the meantime, the flight engineer told both the pilots that the hydraulic pressure was decreasing rapidly and the hydraulic pressure came to zero. This was the point when all three crew members in the cockpit found out that the plane had now come out of their controls. For those who don't know, let me tell you that all the controls of the plane, including ailerons for left-right turn, elevators for pitch, flaps to slow down, all of them are moved with the help of hydraulic pressure, especially when the 1,000 km/h wind is blowing from the front. And the tail of Japan Air 123 had also torn some hydraulic pipes with it. This was the reason that now the entire hydraulic pressure of the plane was over and the controls of the cockpit remained like a showpiece. At an altitude of 24,000 feet, Japan Air 123 had encountered many problems. The cabin pressure was over, the oxygen masks came out, the hydraulic pressure was over, and the controls were lost. And the most dangerous thing is that now the passengers and pilots began to have hypoxia, due to low pressure. Hypoxia is the condition when the oxygen level in the body decreases, causing confusion. It becomes difficult to decide, the movements become slow, and even the person becomes unconscious. In the meantime, the cabin crew was told to put on an oxygen mask. Now, Japan Air 123 was scaring the passengers by moving the roll badly. Now only one thing was left with both the pilots, and that is the controls of the engine. The captain tried to remove the plane from the roll movement by using only the controls of the engine. If the plane has to turn right, then the power of the engines on the left side will have to be increased, and if it has to turn left, then the power of the engines on the right side will have to be increased. Similarly, when the plane will bank to the right in the roll movement, then only the power of the right engine can be increased for a certain time, and it can be straightened again. Using this method, the pilots got a lot of control over the plane's roll movement. Now their mission was only one, to get the plane back to Tokyo Airport as soon as possible. But before that, the plane had to be brought close to the ground so that the pressure in the cabin could increase. For this purpose, elevators are usually used, which were now useless due to the lack of hydraulic pressure. Therefore, the captain gave the idea of lowering the landing gear. Landing gear creates extra drag in the plane, which can slow down the speed. But these landing gears also open with hydraulic pressure. Therefore, the captain decided to open the landing gear at his own weight, and fortunately, they opened. Now, Japan Air 123 takes a circular flight over the city of Otsuki, and its altitude is from 24,000 feet to 13,500 feet, which was a great success for the pilots. But the danger is still there. They had to take a right turn from here to Tokyo, but it was very difficult for the pilots to turn the plane only through engine controls. If they had increased the thrust of the engine, the nose of the plane would have been much higher, which was also reducing the speed. And if the speed is too low, the plane can stall and fall to the ground. Unwillingly, the plane entered the mountainous area of Japan. Turning the plane without controls to Tokyo at low altitude seemed like an impossible task. The captain was told by the first officer to turn right. There is a mountain ahead. But maybe it was not possible to take such a fine turn only with the help of engine controls. At this time, various alarms were heard in the cockpit. Unwillingly, the plane had reached only 6,800 feet above the mountain range, far from Tokyo. After a few minutes, the captain's voice was clearly audible. And then finally, some such sounds were recorded in the cockpit. The Japan airplane crashed into a mountain due to low altitude while turning, who were sitting on the left side in the center of the cabin. The rest of the crew and passengers lost their lives in this horrific incident. The investigation found that 7 years ago, when landing, the tail of this plane collided with the runway. After that, the plane remained grounded for several weeks, and Boeing technicians kept repairing it. In the investigation, it was found that the technicians had installed the tail splice plate in the wrong way. Investigators calculated and said that this faulty repair cabin can only be pressurized up to 11,000 cycles, while Japan Air 123 had completed 12,500 cycles in the same condition. And coincidentally, this pressure could not be tolerated on the same day. After this incident, investigators spent 4 different pilots in the same state in the flight simulator, but all 4 pilots crashed the plane, and no pilot was able to keep the plane in the air for as long as Japan Air 123 was in the air. This is quite surprising because the pilots sitting in the simulator had two very big advantages. One, they already knew what the problem was, and the other, they were calm that their lives would not be lost. Looking at these conditions, it would not be wrong to say that both pilots of Japan Air 123 tried their best to control the plane, and kept it in the air for 45 minutes. I hope you will like and share this video of MZK WorldScope. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next great video.